All right, I want to talk about a concept from Jen McCarty's book that is another thing that we need to address. So one of the themes that has come up a lot when we've tried to locate the origins of the twin flame is that we've run into a lot of content creators who are using a mixture of different belief systems without referencing a source for these beliefs, and then just sort of assuming that the person who is reading it will either have an understanding of these concepts themselves or will just embrace it as an analogy that helps them to serve their purpose or their meaning, whatever that might be. One of the places where we see this happening is where she is referring to the 144,000, which we discussed in the last video. If you didn't see that, go back and check that one out. And now we're going to talk about the bird tribe and why this is a problematic concept. Okay, let's get into her definition first. So here she tells us that the bird tribe refers to the 144,000 starseeds. So these are three different concepts. The bird tribe, which is, I will give you a more understanding and history of this in just a moment. The 144,000, which we discussed in the last video, and know that that is not a number that, the way that she's using it here is actually not how it would have been referenced when it was originally written. And the concept of starseeds, which we also talked about, had elements of spiritual elitism and all kinds of things like that that just make it difficult, that makes it a tricky territory, right? So now we see here that she says the bird tribe are very often reincarnations of Aboriginal indigenous elders who were deeply connected to the outer star system, such as Pleiades, Arcturus, Andromeda, and Sirius, to name but a few. Okay. So let's talk about the concept of the bird tribe. So the concept of the bird tribe is not like a widely recognized or established concept in any specific academic or cultural context. It appears to be a term used in certain New Age spiritual communities to describe a group of people who identify with or have a special, sorry, I'm just doing my hair here, a special affinity for birds. But it's important to note that this concept lacks substantial historical, cultural, or anthropological basis. And it's considered more of a personal belief or a spiritual perspective rather than a widely accepted or recognized concept. But that is not how it is introduced to us by Jen McCarty. So the first problem is something we've already talked about, which is cultural appropriation. If you didn't have a chance to see my discussion about that, go check out the YouTube playlist of the Twin Flames Explained series and look at the one about karma and dharma. I really went at length into cultural appropriation. And if you're a conscious being and your whole thing is about being unconditionally loving and being conscious of others, then it's important for you to understand that concept. You cannot just dismiss it. I definitely had a pushback reaction the first time I learned about cultural appropriation. I was like, what? I'm not allowed to do things? No, you know what? Sometimes you're not allowed to do things. But if you understand why, and you understand how to respect other people, it's not really that challenging. You just have to be mindful about these things. So the first thing is cultural appropriation. Basically, the adoption of borrowing of elements from indigenous cultures without proper understanding or respect for their historical and cultural context. So if the concept of the bird tribe appropriates or misrepresents indigenous beliefs or practices related to birds, it can be disrespectful or offensive. And guess what? Jen McCarty, what are you talking about, Aboriginal bird tribe? So check that, girl. The second thing is oversimplification. Okay, so birds hold diverse meanings, right? Diverse meanings in symbolism. across different cultures and traditions. And reducing these complex beliefs and cultural practices to a single bird tribe concept can oversimplify and homogenize diverse cultural perspectives. And it is overlooking the specific nuances and significance of bird symbolism within each culture. So you're reducing it down to a bland, untraceable concept. And the final thing is a lack of authenticity, because the concept of the bird tribe lacks a clear historical or cultural foundation, and it seems to be like a relatively recent development in New Age or spiritual communities. And its origins are not rooted in any specific cultural tradition or belief system. So because of that, it's just pretty much incorporating various elements from different belief systems, such as indigenous spirituality, shamanism, and nature-based practices. And individuals who resonate with the symbolism of birds or feel a strong connection to avian energy may have adopted the term to describe their personal spiritual journey or community. It is not a mainstream or universally recognized concept, and its origins and application are primarily within the realm of personal beliefs and interpretations rather than grounded specific cultural or historical traditions. So when you're hearing these messages coming from this person who has taken a smorgasbord of different concepts and kind of shoved them all together and ends it with, this spaceship and Jesus and Mary Magdalene, there's just so many problems happening here. And, we're thinking beings, and we can kind of connect the dots, and there's something doesn't smell right with that. So the next thing I'm going to go do is I'm going to go through with my little green Post-it notes here, and I'm going to choose some selections from this book that make me understand why a book that is really kind of filled with a lot of questionable beliefs, we're just going to say, why did this get popular and in this collective? And I think the reason lies in the shared collective experience that she does manage to capture at times. So my next step is going to be to do what I did with Elizabeth Clare Prophet's book, which is I went through and I picked out the things that did resonate, or at least make sense why these ideas or concepts became attractive, because it gave you like a place to put something that was happening to you that was kind of difficult to define, if that makes sense. So that's the next step. And it's taking me a little longer now because I'm really going in deep on this Madame Blavatsky bio and her first book, which, girl, that shit is a lot. It's a lot. But I'm going through it with a fine-tooth comb. I'm making notes where to check the sources and find out the tea for you as much as I can so that we can bring the head and the heart together, so that it's not just a situation where we're reacting in fear to some of the stipulations that these creators are making about what defines a twin flame journey, when there is no rule book. Not a single rule book has written. But what we can say is that we have shared experiences. Let's define those together. And that is what this course ultimately will be doing. When I'm finished with the course, I will have answers for you that are about the things that I can say we all seem to collectively acknowledge. And then I will let you be the judge of whether those things are true for you or not. And I will give you the facts that I have within my ability to research whether or not what we have been taught is true, or whether it is something that we really need to personally and individually define and not make any rules for any other people. That's my goal. So see you soon.